Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to stand before you today and share some memories. Hopefully I can get through this. About our wonderful grandmother and mother and aunt, Wanda, and daughter, I should say, as well, Wanda Barnes. I'm just going to go over the life sketch. Wanda Beverly Barnes was born to Alta and Earl Barnes on May 8, 1926 in Salt Lake City, Utah. She passed away peacefully January 11, 2020 at Bethesda Nursing Home in Cookeville, Tennessee. She lived to be 93 years old. Her story began in a cute little white house with a white picket fence where she lived at 2908 South, 500 East. She had a lot of fun on that street as she grew up. Her best friend was Jean Peck, whom she played with, and other friends as well. They would go ice skating at Nibley Park golf course across the street in the winter on the frozen ponds there. And sometimes in the warmer months, they would go around and collect golf balls and look for those and try and sell them for $1. And it's kind of funny, I didn't know that about her, but some of my own boys would buy a golf course, and that's kind of a fun thing that they'd like to do and try to earn some money as well. So that was kind of neat to hear that. She had two sisters named Muriel and Alta, Muriel being the oldest and Alta being the youngest. They were also her good friends. One time, her and Muriel wanted to see if they could fly like a bird, so they got a broom and climbed on top of the house, sat on it, and they jumped off the house. Needless to say, they did not fly, but they did get pretty bruised and banged up. They sure scared their mother as well. One year at Christmas time, their father did not drive them to get the annual Christmas tree for their house. So Wanda and Alta walked all the way down to the 27th South and State Street and bought their own Christmas tree. And they carried that big, heavy Christmas tree all the way home. And there were a few times on Christmas morning when Muriel and Alta would tiptoe out of the bedroom and lock the door. They would get a few more things ready, and they would not let Alta out of the bedroom for a long while. She would get so mad, and then they would finally let her out, and she would run into the front room and see a Christmas wonderland. Wanda's father, Earl, drove a yellow Oldsmobile from the early 1930s. He later drove a 1938 Plymouth. The family sure had a lot of fun driving around town in their cars. And so did their dad, Earl, who drove her and Alta to the zoo every Easter. It would rain, and they would have to sit there until the rain stopped in the car, which seemed like an eternity. After the rain would finally stop, they would finally go into the zoo and see all the wonderful animals. They were so excited. Later on, Aunt Alta would tell us that her sister Wanda was the sweetest, kindest person that she ever knew. It was so nice to hear that. Growing up, the family had well water from their own private well. Earl put in 2 fish ponds, and he filled them with catfish that he would get out of Utah Lake. Sometimes the girls would go fishing with him. Wanda's dad also stored some of his vegetables in a box, and he would pipe the cold water over the box to keep them cool. Earl raised chickens in the hen house in the backyard, and Wanda loved to go down there and visit those chickens, help gather the chicken eggs, and bring them into the house for cooking. Some of the other places they all enjoyed going were the canyons for nice picnics, and to Lagoon to also enjoy picnics and ride the rides, and do many other fun things there. There was actually a pavilion there, I wasn't aware of this, that had really beautiful wood lattice work, kind of engraved throughout the wood. And that woodwork had many beautiful patterns. And this was actually done by Wanda's grandfather, William Oakden, who helped build that. They were very proud of that. Some fun facts about Grandma Wanda is that she attended Granite High School, and she was a Granite High farmer. She played the violin at Granite High and was in some of the musical events there. She went to school with Neil A. Maxwell, and he was in her math class, and she always kind of would mention how he was the smartest one in the class. And she thought that was one of the neatest things. Her grandmother, Mercy Winchester Oakton, owned and ran a boarding house there in Salt Lake City. And another fun fact is her father, Earl, rented a room there one time, and that's where he actually met Wanda's mother, Alta, and one of Earl's friends, Chris. Chris was with him at the time when Earl met her sister, Lucille, there as well, and ended up marrying her. Wanda worked at the Capitol building as a stenographer and secretary. Their favorite family trip was going clear up to Yellowstone Park and seeing the beautiful scenery there in Old Faithful. Wanda would take her younger sister Alta once every so often and walk clear to Murray from their house. While there, they would go to the Murray movie theater and see the latest picture show. They would have so much fun doing that. When she was a young teenager and in her 20s, she would dress so cute and wearing the latest styles. Wanda would later meet and marry Edwin Andrew Lundskog. They would go on dates on the bus because he did not drive. I think I was listening to someone earlier to mention those memories of being on the bus, not really remembering why he was there, but remembering them going on those particular dates. Because Edwin, they would go on those dates because Eddie, my grandfather Eddie, did not drive. I don't think he ever got a driver's license, actually. So grandmother Wanda was kind of the chauffeur of the family and would drive her. Would drive the family around. They got married on March 2nd, 1948. And they had a beautiful wedding and marriage ceremony at Wanda's home on 500 or 5th East. They got sherbet punch from Snellgrove's Ice Cream Company on 21st South, and Alta could remember seeing those big, giant ice cream cones. I think many of us saw when we were growing up and younger. I still remember those. Those giant ice cream cones. I remember going and getting ice cream. Wanda looks so pretty. And that's the picture that you're looking at here. That's posted. Wanda's father also worked as a janitor at an elementary school. And when he retired from that, he decided to get a job in Lehigh at Utah Lake. So Wanda enjoyed going on nice trips out there to Utah Lake with her father. And actually, they'd rented a house there for a while. He worked on the boat harbor there. And one day, he actually fell into the lake. And it was kind of a pretty funny thing, but he got into an automobile accident soon after that. And at that point, he kind of had enough and decided he was going to move back home into their home on 5th East. I have just a couple memories I wanted to share real quick. One of these is from my cousin Grace, my grandmother's granddaughter. Grace says, I love my grandma. Without her help, I wouldn't be here. She was the best woman I've ever known. Thank you, Grandma, for your positive influence in my life. You took me to church and taught me about God and gave me money for my apartment. And I know Grace loved Grandma very much. And just a couple memories I had growing up. I always remember my grandmother Wanda coming over to take care of us and watch us. And I know my sisters and I, at least myself, was always causing mischief and giving Grandma a hard time, giving her a kind of run for her money when she'd come and watch us. But Grandma always brought I'm sure you'll hear this again, but cinnamon rolls. I know my sisters, and I always remember she'd always stop at Hardee's on 13th East and grab some fresh warm cinnamon rolls. And she'd bring those to us, and it just always made the day a great day to start the day. And I love my grandmother's laugh. She was always happy. I can't ever remember a time she was really upset, unless I made her upset. Which I did a lot. But Grandma was always happy, always positive, and she had the cutest laugh. I still remember that laugh. When I was in high school, I was determined to get a new sports car, and I couldn't just get a cheap car. I had to have a really nice, more expensive car. And I knew that would be a challenge, trying to convince my mom and my dad to put down the money for that. And so I just skipped them and went straight to Grandma, thinking I could sweep her up and talk her into co-signing on a car for me. And Grandma, she said to me, Cameron, if you'll go to church with me at my church, I will do that for you. And I said, absolutely, Grandma, I'm there. So I went there and spent a day at Grandma's church. It was a wonderful day and a great memory. And soon after that, she was in the credit union co-signing for that car for me. She took a pretty big risk on me, but it was a good memory I had, and I'm grateful for her. And I do remember on Christmas time, she would get a little Christmas village out under the tree. She always had these little home snow and trains and stuff that would go around the Christmas tree. And Grandma was a wonderful cook. She made some wonderful meals, and we had a lot of great family get-togethers there for birthdays and other things, and Grandma always took care of us. I love my grandma very much. I'm going to miss her. Our mom, our aunt, our grandma, and our friend Wanda sure had a fun, interesting life. We all loved her, and we will miss her dearly. Love you, Grandma.
And my last tear up here. I think I just made a mess of my face. But so good to see everybody out here, friends from close by and far away, and we thank you for coming, all of you, and supporting us, and some of you from so far away. So, and my talk is, I don't know why, but my talk is mostly about food. So I hope, if you're not hungry, you probably will be. Anyway, but to describe my mom, as my son Cameron said, she had a silly way about her with a cute little giggle. If anybody knew her, she would just giggle and giggle and giggle. And she just loved to be funny and make you laugh. And but she would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And as you heard, my mother grew up on 5th East in Salt Lake. After she married Dad, my dad, Edwin, they moved on to Garden Avenue in Salt Lake City, where she set up housekeeping. That was the first house that I actually remember living in, was on Garden Avenue, and that probably was the first house. And I had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. So Mom and Dad had 6 children. We later moved to Malvern Avenue, which was around 27th South and Highland Drive, somewhere between Highland Drive and 13th East. Growing up with Mom was fun and interesting. She was very easygoing. She would go along with almost anything, with whatever you wanted to do. Some would say she was a little bit too nice. After school, I would come home to the aroma of a lot of baked goods, fresh baked goods. There would be pies, cinnamon rolls, cookies, and cakes, all kinds of fun desserts. Sometimes there would be 2 different kinds of desserts. Sometimes there would be, cookies and a pie, or cake and a pie. You couldn't believe it. All made from scratch. However, her signature dessert was, and it was my best favorite dessert that I liked, was a chocolate layer cake. Oh, how she could make those chocolate layer cakes. She was always trying out the latest new recipes. And she was a great mom, as you heard, sister, aunt, wife, friend, and homemaker. Most everyone, all my friends liked her because she was so nice. They loved my mom. They would always tell me, and we always knew when it was the end of the pay period, when the money was low, because Mom would always make her famous potato pancakes. And, she would make those, and you could eat them with ketchup and other things, or just jam on them like a dessert, either way. But to this day, I've tried to make them, and I cannot make them the way Mom did. Mother was always prepared and had a basement full of food storage, so we knew if something happened, we were not going without, some of which I would inherit later. She even had a machine that would grind up peanuts and make peanut butter. Sometimes she would take me to the Villa Theater on Highland Drive, where we would see the latest movies, such as, I think this was one, I hope I don't get it mixed up when I was first married, but How the West was one, Fantasia, I remember that one, and others. She would also take me and some other of my brothers and sisters and friends to see the picture shows at the Southeast Theater, and this was in Sugar House. They were held every Saturday morning. They would show Ma and Pa Kettle, The Three Stooges, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and others. Mother loved to clean the house, or at least the house was kept very clean, always. She always was mopping the floors, vacuuming, dusting, scrubbing. In the early years, she would hang out all of our clothes out to dry on the clotheslines. Later on, she finally got a dryer. It made life a lot easier. I was quite an adventurous child, and some of you will attest to that. And that was putting it mildly. And anyways, and one day, my mom let me put on a carnival in my backyard. I just had this vision that I had to have this carnival and have all these people come and make all this money. I don't know why. But anyways, but my mom went along with it. And there would be this long table full of treats I'd sell. There were cookies, candies, popcorn, punch, lemonade, and more. I would have a beanbag toss that I would make and decorate. A person was in our playhouse dressed up and tell pretend fortunes, all kinds of things. Mom would take me to the store to get the treats. She would help me set up and supply the tablecloths and more. Soon her backyard was filled with kids, and we were having a carnival. Now, most mothers would pull out their hair, run away, do something, but not my mom. Not my mom. Birthdays and holidays were always special. I always got a birthday party with friends. She would serve cake, and we always had to have Jell-O with whipped cream. She had that Jell-O and whipped cream. I think there was ice cream too, but always Jell-O. Sometimes, anyway, there would be games and fun and prizes, lots of fun. In the early years, Mom didn't drive, or at least we didn't have a car. We would walk or take the bus. Sometimes my sweet relatives would take us places, or the neighbors would drive us. But then one day, my mom, she learned how to drive. I was probably in about, I can't remember, but I want to say 6th, 7th grade, the early years. Anyway, so now life was so much easier and nice. Or until one day, we were headed downtown in the car. We drove along 9th East, somewhere around, going clear downtown to somewhere around 4th South. We ran a stop sign and got into a car accident. My sister and I decided to throw a big, giant beach ball around in the back seat, or some kind of a ball, and play ball. And my mom was driving, imagine that. We were very loud, and so needless to say, Mom crashed the car. And Mom felt so bad, and so did we. We ruined our new car. And it took us all those years to get one, so it's like, what? So anyways, but luckily a lady on the corner took us into her house and was trying to help us and comfort us and things. Mother loved to cut out recipes and make recipe books. We would find the recipes in the news. She would find the recipes in the newspaper. She also had a bunch and tons of cookbooks. Later on, I would inherit some of these cookbooks. And now, some other places we would go, and I almost left this out, I wrote it in the last minute, I don't want to forget it, would be right around Christmas time. I remember going down to Sugar House, and we would go Christmas shopping, and I think it was somewhere by Granite Furniture Company or somewhere, but we would look in some of the store windows, and there would be all kinds of decorations for Christmas with mechanical people, or Santa Clauses or elves or something in them, and so on. We would see Santa Claus. He had a cute little house. Santa Claus had a cute little house on 21st South. I don't know how many of you remember that or sit in the audience, but a cute little decorated Santa house on 21st South. And we would visit him and then the popcorn shop. She also took me swimming to either Fairmount Park or Hygeia in Sugar House. And I believe we went ice skating at Hygeia. I think they had ice skating there. And all kinds of fun things. And then, of course, one of my most favorites, Easter. Easter, we'd always go to Fairmount Park, grab the Easter baskets, and get the eggs and do the Easter egg hunts. They're so fun. Now, when I was a little bit older, my mom decided to go to work. She actually became a nurse's aide or some kind of a caretaker there and worked at a nursing home. And I think she did this because my sister Minnie was an LPN. And so she got interested in that for a few years. She took care of 3 mentally challenged kids, my 2 brothers and my sister. So she was always caring and loved my brothers and sister and took really, really good care of them and all that. She loved them so much, and it was a fun thing, a nice thing for her to do. She was so giving. Every time we came out to visit me, every time she came out to visit me or babysit, she brought treats. And again, she brought those famous cinnamon rolls from Hardee's. The kids will tell you, and from the Dairy Queen there. Sometimes she would bring me a sack of groceries. She'd come out with 1 or 2 big sacks of groceries and supply our kitchen when I was first married. And she always had to bring something. It was so nice. I felt very loved and secure as a child. My mom always put herself before others. As a child, she always made sure I would go to church. Her calling in the church was a primary teacher. I don't know if she had other callings, but I remember a primary teacher and her in the early years going with me. So many memories. And of course, I'm not going to tell you every memory at church, but boy, there were a lot of fun memories. So many good ones. She listened to me and would dry my tears. She would comfort me. She would help me with homework. She would take me places. She would come to all my performances, all the nice things that moms do. And just all kinds of things. I remember one time too, and we did go to church, or I did go to primary. Just one memory sticks out. I think she was a primary teacher then, and you guys probably remember that. Well, most of you are young, you probably don't. We'd have a board dinner for the primary, or we'd be just right after school, and we'd have a big cartoon up on the thing, and we'd see Felix the Cat or Woody Woodpecker. I don't know if Mickey Mouse was there, but Mr. Magoo. I mean, there was just all kinds of fun old cartoons. We'd have a nice board dinner, roast beef, mashed potatoes, different things, and then we'd have a Snelly. I think those were from Snell Groves, a Snelly or a brownie. Anyway, that was fun. And then one other fun memory I would like to share is that sometimes on the weekend I would get to stay overnight at my girlfriend's house, and we would play with Barbie dolls. And this will really date me, you guys. We'd watch Perry Mason, 77 Sunset Strip, all kinds of fun old movies. It'd be a Friday night. We'd pop popcorn. We'd have other fun treats. Anyway, it was just so much fun to look forward to that. And my girlfriend's mom was single, so a lot of times she would go out on dates. So mom would come down and tend us, or she'd at least check up on us. And even though she had such a big family that needed her, she was always helping others. We probably ran her ragged. My brother, Vernon, also, I wanted to mention Vernon. He's sitting there in the back. I love him so much, and Mom did too. And he was in a special ed at school, and my mother hired a tutor. He'll remember Mrs. Lillian Lundell and her daughter. Anyway, they come out and tutored Vernon every Saturday. They would come out and teach him math, which he was very good at. Vernon was way better at math than I ever was, and other subjects, and he loved that, and they built a relationship, had a nice bond. And anyway, later on, Vernon would make it into the regular grade in high school, and graduated with his graduating class in the regular grade. And we just were so proud of Vernon. It was really an accomplishment. So happy for Vernon, and wow. And then just another example of Mom caring that her children succeeded in life. She would always get them all the help they needed. She would find every available resource she could and use it. Well, I could go on and on. I'm famous for probably talking too much, but I could go on and on about Mom and her memories. There are so many, but later on, Mom would join the Baptist church and move away to be with my sister Janet in Denver, Colorado. And then later on, she would move to Cookeville, Tennessee. After Janet's husband died, I felt like I lost my best friend, because again, after he died, they relocated to Tennessee. So I felt like I lost my best friend. This was so very hard on me to deal with. At times, I felt like I was so lonely. Who would I lean on? Who would I talk to? Life was so hard. But I eventually got used to it. And I had to learn to lean on myself, my Savior. And of course, I have a wonderful family, all of you. We have fun reunions and had fun reunions. But oh, how I miss my mom. I know one day we'll be together again. I love you, Mom. I love you, Mom, with all my heart. And I just wanted to end with a little poem about mother. Mother. M is for the million things she gave me. O means only that she's growing old. T is for the tears she shed to save me. H is for her heart of purest gold. E is for eyes with love, light shining. R means right, and right shall always be. Put them all together, they spell mother. A word that means the world to me. And anyway, so we love our moms, and again, I love you, Mom, and I say things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen, and again, thank you for coming.
Jesus offers me which is when I remember most of my things. I do remember wishing she still lived close because I wanted to visit her often and just be able to talk to her about memories that she had. I remember begging her to move back to Utah, and I told her I would see her all the time if she did. However, that wasn't possible for her to do. I loved my grandma. Grandma Wanda had the cutest laugh, as has been mentioned. She had a very contagious, infectious laugh, and anyone who knew her would know what I'm talking about. The closest thing that I've heard to her laugh is my sister Lindsay. That's the closest we can get to it now, so if you ever want to know what she sounded like when she laughed, you want to come up here and laugh for us. That's the closest she can get. She laughed all the time, even when what was being said wasn't even funny. Some might say that it was a nervous laugh, when not sure how to react in a conversation, but to me it made my grandma so much fun to be around. I mean, who doesn't even enjoy being around someone who laughs all the time at anything? It always made me feel really special and validated and important. My mom would invite my grandma to every recital that we had, every play we were in, every rehearsal and concert that her grandchildren were ever involved in, and my grandma would always be there. She never missed one birthday of her grandchildren's until she moved away. She loved her family and was so proud of her daughter and her grandchildren. Whenever she would hear of our accomplishments, she would tell us how wonderful that was, and she wasn't able to do that, so she was very proud. I remember her saying, I never could do these things, so I'm so glad that you guys can do these things. I do remember a conversation we had when I was a teen, and she was telling me how she never got to do the things that we got to do growing up, and she was so grateful that we were having these wonderful experiences. Grandma often would say how talented we all were and how she never got any talents passed down in her genes, but we all knew that wasn't true. She could cook very well, and she could also sing. I remember when I was about 7 years old, she came over to my house to help my mom make these 3D Christmas trees out of cookies. It was coconut sugar cookies. And these impressed me so much that to this day it's a tradition in my family to make these at Christmas time. And I know my sister started doing that too. I also remember visiting my grandma every Christmas Eve, and when we got there, we got to open one present at her house. And this was one of my favorite traditions that we did every year. And on the way home, we would drive through Christmas Street and see all the pretty lights that were on all the houses. I will always remember this. We still do this to this day, drive down Christmas Street with our family, and it's really fun. I also remember my grandma coming over and helping my mom bottle food, and now my sisters and I have a love for bottling food. I also remember my mom wanting to surprise my grandma one year for Christmas, and she wanted to buy her a microwave. And this was something that she was a little bit nervous, and she wasn't sure if she would love it. But my grandma started to use the microwave, and then she never stopped using it, and she absolutely loved it. When I got married, I would try to call my grandma on the phone every couple of months just to check in. I loved talking to her, and she was a very good listener. As she got older, she told me how it was getting harder to hold her head up while she was, which was making it difficult to balance and be able to walk. So I was very concerned for her health. But she would just say how weird it was, and she would make light of it and just laugh. She would say, "Can you believe it, Krista? I'm getting old, but at least I can still see and hear." So she always was very sweet and was very positive. Whenever my grandma would talk to me, she was always in good spirits. As a child, I remember my grandma would babysit us during the summer since my mom had to work, and she always told me that I was different than most kids because I would rather sit and talk with my grandma than go play like most kids my age. I loved being around adults and talking with them, and I found value in that. I wanted to know everything that they knew. So I would listen to her tell me stories about her childhood and raising my mom. If my grandma wasn't talking with me, then you could always find her washing the dishes by hand. She was a very hard worker. She was always cleaning, like my mom said. I remember my grandma's specialty for lunch when she was babysitting us. She would always make us tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. She made them for us, and it is still one of my favorites. Grandma would squeeze a fresh lemon into the soup and add some salt and pepper to taste, and it was so good. This has been mentioned like 3 times, so please forgive me. When my grandma would arrive in the morning, she would bring us a box of cinnamon rolls from Hardee's, and just those warm cinnamon rolls, it was just really nice to have those, and it's something we look forward to. So we'll miss that about Grandma. But you know, Hardee's isn't here anymore, so we can't even relive that. It's a memory now. Because she moved away, my kids never got to meet her until just 2 years ago. Unfortunately, my youngest 2 have still not had the chance to meet her, but my oldest 2 got to go to Tennessee with me and my mom to meet their great-grandma for the first time. And they fell in love with her, just as I had as a young child. She is so easy to love, and by this time, Alzheimer's was setting in, so she would go in and out of reality. But my boys had a great time getting to know her. And if you want to hear a great memory that'll be sure to make you laugh, just ask them about the picture she painted. It was hilarious. It never got old on that visit in the nursing home, asking Grandma about the picture she painted. She would laugh and laugh, and my boys would say, "That is so funny." And why is she laughing so much? What's so funny about this picture? And I had no idea. I said, I have no idea why Grandma's laughing, but Grandma sure does. There were also a couple of German words that she would repeat over and over and say how funny they sounded, and she would laugh. And my boys and I would laugh. And honestly, that's what I'll always remember about my grandma, is how much she laughed and how fun it was to be around her. These memories I will cherish forever. She lived a hard life and I never expected her to make it to the age she did. Grandma was a strong lady and very sweet, and she will be missed by all. And my brother forgot to mention one thing and asked me to read this. So these are her children that she had, from oldest to youngest. It was Minnie, Lee, Beverly, Vernon, Joni, and Janet. And she's survived by her children, Vernon, Beverly, Joni, Janet, grandchildren, Candace, Krista, Cameron, Lindsay, Sharice, and Grace, and 16 great-grandchildren. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take you guys back in time and read, I guess it's an essay that my Aunt Janet wrote. I'm so excited to find it again and read it. It's an interview with my grandma about growing up during the war. So I thought I would start off and read that to you. And it came with a picture. I don't know if you can see it, but I just thought that was a really nice picture of my grandma. That's how I always remember her. So she, as I was looking at this driving down here, it's like she was with me in the car smiling at me the whole way down here, and I loved it. I love her smile. Okay, so it's titled A Window into World War II by Janet Doxey. Okay. It says the year was 1941, and before long it would be Christmas in Salt Lake City, Utah. Snow blanketed the old-fashioned city sidewalks, making them slippery and difficult to tread upon. Traditional red and green lights are happily strewn across the streetlights. The local furniture store had put up their yearly storefront display. Santa, Mrs. Claus, and the elves moved mechanically to the melody of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. while glee-filled children push their little faces against the large window to get a better look. Holiday trees are for sale at the local gas station on the corner, and the smell of pine swirls through the crisp winter night. Just down the street, a dim porch light glows on an old white wood-framed house. Inside, a young girl of 15 sits Indian-style, fidgeting with the dial on the Magnavox radio. 65 years have come and gone since that winter night in Salt Lake City, but the memories are still there. Wanda Lundskog giggles nervously as she remembers the sentimental details of her life during World War II. Beautiful pale blue eyes, a slightly upturned nose, and the structure of her face contradict the determined traces of her age. Her eyes are in soft focus, and a smile rests upon her kind face while she lets her mind linger over days gone by. A large fireplace encased in an oak mantel introduces her living room, and her favorite winged back recliner is angled, giving her a view of the entire room. The smell of stew wafts through the air as she hesitates, exclaiming, "I'm not sure I can remember everything. It was so long ago." Born to Alta and Earl Barnes in May of 1926, Wanda grew up during the Great Depression of World War II. One of 3 sisters, she is the middle child. Maybe that's why I always felt like I related to my grandma, because I'm a middle child too, so we have that in common. Wanda is painfully shy and reluctantly coaxed out of her shell. "My sisters Alta and Muriel were much more outgoing than I was," she recalls how she watched from atop a tree as her mother would feed the down and out who came to their back door when work was impossible to find. A wistful look sweeps across her face as though she were watching her story unfold. When asked where she was when she first heard the news of war, her eyes flashed with concern. "I was 15 and a half. Dad was smoking his pipe and relaxing in the rocker. We were listening to the radio." She stops to clarify. "You see, we didn't have television then. Our entertainment was the radio. We'd listen by the hour to Frank Sinatra. He was all the rage. I remember hearing President Roosevelt speaking his now famous speech. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. War was declared that same day at 4:10 p.m. EST. We were bombed and Pearl Harbor was in flames. The ships were sinking amidst all that smoke. It wasn't until later that I truly understood the gravity of the situation. I recollect being very sad and confused." Anyone living during World War II will never forget movie-tone newsreels, advertisements, and the buzz among friends and neighbors. Wanda is no exception. As she calls to mind the mood of the nation, she said, "There was no trouble getting people to sign up to fight in the war. We were all moved with patriotism and wanted to back our president." She laughs when describing the "Uncle Sam Wants You" posters in the local Woolworths. The newsreels portrayed the Japanese people as evil and deceitful. There were so many deaths in our neighborhood. The lady around the corner whose son was absolutely handsome, Steve Monson, was killed in action, and his mother was never the same. Wanda pauses, as if offering a moment of silence for those who lost their lives. Her mood darkened, and as she spoke with deliberate admiration for Albert Middleness, who was killed in the Battle of the Bulge while fighting Hitler and his Nazi regime. "You know, one woman lost all 5 sons." Her voice trailed off to a whisper. "They gave the widows some kind of fund for their loss." By 1944, the war had become a test of endurance for Wanda. She was a young woman coming of age, about to attend her first USO, which stands for United States Organization, dance. I remember her telling me about this, by the way. There was a light-hearted ring in Wanda's voice that matched the chime of a popular Benny Goodman song when speaking about the innocent fun and frolic with United States servicemen. Wanda recalls how fashion went to war. She said the dresses couldn't be too short. Absolutely no bare midriffs were allowed. All the nylons were used for parachutes, and so they were rationed. Everything was rationed: gas, rubber, sugar, and even coffee. There was a popular saying at the time, "I'm just stocking up before the hoarders get here." Researchers agree about the effects of rationing during the war. World War II had a dramatic effect on American fashion. Restrictions on materials such as silk, nylon, rubber, and leather changed the way clothes were made and the way that they were worn. For men, shortages of fabrics meant that civilian suits became simpler. Gone was the double-breasted three-piece suit of the 1930s. The effect of Order L85 on women's clothes was also dramatic. Fabric shortages led to narrower waistlines, shorter skirts and blouses with cuffs and pockets. Wanda's smile broadened as she recounted the USO dances that she attended. She and her best friend Barbara would roll their hair in curlers and take the bus downtown. Once they arrived, they jumped off the bus, making a mad dash up the stairs to the powder room before anyone could spot them. I remember the ladies' room was filled to overflowing with women putting on their pancake makeup. Our lipstick was ruby red to match our fingernails. Once we were ready, we floated downstairs. All the servicemen on leave, men from every branch, were waiting for us at the bottom of the stairs. Wanda explains that when she wasn't dancing, she was singing, and as friends and strangers brought together by war gathered around the piano, they sang familiar songs of the day. Our time together is almost over, and the room is beginning to dim as daylight comes to an end. Wanda's eager manner is more relaxed, and her lovely face is showing signs of fatigue. When asked how she felt when World War II ended, Wanda revealed that news of President Roosevelt's death had reached her, and Vice President Harry S. Truman was sworn in as President of the United States in April 1945. He had to make a terrible decision to drop the atomic bomb. What a horrible action to have on your conscience. After 5 years of war, every GI in the Pacific was relieved and knew the war was coming to an end. Wanda remembers V.E. Day vividly. Reports began spreading of the United States victory, and people everywhere began spilling into the streets of downtown Salt Lake chanting, "Victory over Europe!" Ticker tape streamed out of the office windows onto the people below. Everyone was dancing and hugging. What a sight to behold. The war was over, and many had lost their lives. The expression on her face and the slight gesture of her hand indicated that our interview had also come to an end. Wanda stood up gingerly. While walking towards the kitchen to check on her supper, she pondered out loud, "Peace on earth, goodwill to men." Henry W. Longfellow put his heart to pen and wrote those famous words Wanda uttered at the end of our interview. "I heard the bells on Christmas Day" was written in 1864 during the Civil War. Down through the centuries, his immortal hymn has encouraged countless members going through the horrors of war from that time until now. And in despair I bowed my head. "There is no peace on earth," I said, "for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men." Then pealed the bells more loud and deep, "God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men." I just absolutely love that interview. It's just such a special treasure to have in our family, and if anyone wants a copy of that later, come see me and I'll get you a copy. In closing, I just wanted to share a few memories of my grandma that are special to me. And I think a lot of what I wanted to share has been said, so a few more thoughts came to mind. And as I was sitting over there listening to my sister, I was reminded of this time when I was in 3rd grade, and I had wrote this poem at school about Rip Van Winkle, the man who slept for 100 years. And I don't remember exactly what it said, but I do remember a line in there, something about spiders being in his nose and mushrooms growing between his toes. And I came home and read it to my grandma, and she just started laughing so hard she almost fell off her chair. That's the loudest I've ever heard my grandma laugh, and the longest. And she laughed and she laughed, and she insisted that I read that poem to everyone in the family, and she wanted a copy of it, and she just went on and on for days. The next time I saw her, she brought it up again and wanted me to read it again, and I'm sad I lost that poem. I don't know where it is anymore, but I do remember how that just made her so happy. My grandma loved to giggle, as we all know, and everybody's always told me that's where I get my giggle from, is my grandma. One thing that I loved about my grandma is every time she came to our house, she would make us her famous grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. So to this day, I love that meal, and I pass that on to my kids. They love that meal. So she started this legacy, and she doesn't even know it. We've talked about the cinnamon rolls, but I remember many occasions walking into my house and just seeing the comforting face of my grandma Wanda sitting there at the kitchen table or in the living room. And a lot of times it was a surprise. I'd walk in the door from school or coming home from a friend's house, and there she was just sitting there smiling, and it just made my day. I loved seeing my grandma. I absolutely loved it when she'd come babysit us, and the one thing I loved most was that I could sit down with her and share with her all of my childhood dramas, and she was just such a good listener. She always had the best advice, and she was always on my side. So I loved it. I loved talking to her. And I remember when I'd go to her home, I still remember this day, the smell of her bathroom. It smelled like ivory soap. She always had this bar of ivory soap, and it smelled so clean. And I remember one time when I got to sleep over at her house. It's the only time I remember sleeping over, and it was just me, so I felt really special. But I remember she made me wear my socks to bed. And that was something that we just never did, so I thought it was so strange. And I tried to protest, and she said, no, you'll catch a cold, you have to wear your socks to bed. And that night I obeyed, and I went to bed with my socks on. So they were the knee-high socks. But I do remember that. And she'd always fix us sandwiches and potato chips for lunch, and I loved that. And as everyone has said before, her laugh was infectious. Whenever she would giggle, it was like a domino effect. We'd all start giggling. Then we'd all be laughing and giggling for 10 minutes, and we don't know what we're laughing about. We just know we're laughing, and we can't stop because Grandma started it. So she was really good at that. And last thing I just wanted to say was how supportive she was. As my sister said, she came to everything. And I remember one time, I know I have a picture of it somewhere, she came to our clogging recital at, I think it was at Murray Park. And I remember I had a pair of yellow sunglasses, and they were stars, and I had an extra pair. And I put them on her face, and then my mom took a picture of us, and we were both smiling with these star sunglasses, these big cheesy grins. And I thought my grandma was so cool for doing that, and I just loved her. I was probably about 6 years old. But yeah, I absolutely love my grandma, and I will miss her, and I know that she is up in heaven right now giggling with the angels, and they're all having a wonderful time. But I love her, and thanks for letting me share.
Creation, stronger than nations, power without end, and yet through them we find our truest friend. His hands, sermons of kindness, healing man's blindness, halting years of pain, children waiting to be held again. His hands would serve his whole life through, showing hands what hands might do, giving, ever giving, endlessly. Each day was filled with selflessness, and I'll not rest till I make of his hands what they could be, till these hands become like those of Galilee. sin, then bidding man to follow him. His hands would serve his whole life through, showing man what hands might do, giving, ever giving, endlessly. Each day was filled with selflessness, and I'll not rest till I make of my hands what they could be, till these hands become like those of Galilee. His hands clasp in agony as he lay bleeding in the garden, while just moments away other hands betray him out of greed, shameful greed. And then his hands are trembling, straining to carry the beam that they'd be nailed to, as he stumbles through the streets, heading for the hill on which he'd die. He would die. They take his hands, his mighty hands, those gentle hands, and then they pierce them, they pierce them. He mends them because of love. From birth to death was selflessness, and clearly now I see him with his hands calling to me. And though I'm not yet as I would be, he has shown me how I could be. I will make my hands like those from Galilee.
That was truly lovely. Thank you. And I really enjoyed listening to all these wonderful memories of Aunt Wanda. She was a quiet woman, and although I did go to her house occasionally, she didn't say much. But now I know a lot more about her, and it's too bad I didn't know it all while she was still alive, but I'm so grateful to know what a wonderful woman she was. And I laugh a lot too. Maybe that gene's in there somewhere. If you're a laugher, you got the Wanda gene. So actually we're not blood relatives, so that can't be, but never mind. I'm going to shorten my talk a little bit. I wanted to be last so that I could adjust it according to what time was left, and we have very little time. But I just want to share a few scriptures that have been running through my mind. One is for the living. It's blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And the greatest comfort comes from our Lord Jesus Christ, who this song was about, and how he sacrificed himself, how he suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane, we might have healing, that we might have hope, that we might have repentance, that we might return to our Heavenly Father and be able to live with Him again in our families. I mean, it's so simple. The gospel is so simple, but yet so very profound. And another scripture, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they rest from their labors and their works do follow them. And it sounds like Wanda just did a fantastic job being a wonderful wife and mother and giving her family a lot of love. And that is the very best any of us can do in this life. And I will end with my testimony that I know that our Savior lives and that He loves each one of us. That if we follow Him, we can lead meaningful and purposeful lives. We can help others, and we can be happy. And it's, like I said, a very simple message. And I'm so grateful I know this, and I do know this. I know that healing comes through Jesus Christ, because I've experienced that myself in my life. And I share this with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Brothers and sisters, we've been very blessed today to hear these wonderful tributes, these wonderful memories, these wonderful stories of a wonderful woman. I would add my testimony to Sister Anderson's. I'm so grateful for the Spirit that has been here today, that comforts and helps us through these times and gives us hope. Gives us the hope that through our Savior, Jesus Christ, whose gift to us was to die for us, to be resurrected so that we too can return to our Heavenly Father and return to our family. It is my testimony that we will again be reunited with those that we love. That though our partings are tender here on this earth, the reunion that we will experience will be ever so much more tender and so much more joyful. And that you will hear your mother and your grandmother, your friend, your sister, a wonderful laugh again, and be able to continue to share these wonderful experiences that you've shared today. More will be made, and additional memories will continue. And I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. We'll close our meeting today, our memorial service today, by singing hymn number 152, God Be With You Till We Meet Again, after which our benediction will be given by Brother Michael Grouch.
Like
Yeah, you were a bodybuilder.
like a bodybuilder, but I didn't lift any more than that. But if I would have only been like 6 miles or 10 miles an hour.
Wow. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
A mile is 12 miles an hour, 9 miles an hour, 9.8 at 7.654.
Wow.
Did you know the mile they run the mile now? What are they doing? 340?
Probably.
Yeah, they're well under 4.
Yeah, it's way under 4, isn't it?
Uh-huh. This is so fun to have you see your cousins.
I like my cousin.
I like your cousins too.
Yeah, we saw him when he was out in the hospital there.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
That food looks good.
Yeah,
we should probably get some.
Yeah, Diane and I went out to see him.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad. I actually took the wrong one. Mom, want to take a picture with her?
Yeah, where's Mom? Oh, she's getting her food.
You're supposed to eat, Brian.
I know.
Enjoy your food.
Enjoy your food.
Here's Mom right here. Mom, they're all related. They all live up on that street. I'd like to tell Violet how good she looks.
You know how many things happen? You should like compare
Lean, mean machine.
They were showing me pictures from when he was a teenager earlier today.
Yeah, so like you'll hear the recordings for his funeral.
I wouldn't
all nice. And then after this funeral was like
Are you gonna eat?
yelling at the
You don't want to dip it in your soup?
No, just eat it like that.
This will be good.
All right.
Swipe by Lindsay.
Look right here and wave. Ready? We love you, Grandma.